back. I recognize myself for 5 minutes to ask questions. Ms. Hemingway, I want to start with you. In the fall of 2020, the Center for Tech and Civil Life gave $6.3 million collectively to the Wisconsin cities of Racine, Green Bay, Madison, Milwaukee, and Kenosha, correct?
I actually have the number slightly higher. It was, over 10 million, I think, to Wisconsin proper, and I think maybe it was that amount in the fall of 2020, but as much as 8.5 million overall.
So we'll agree that it's a lot of money. Now these cities are supposed to spend the CTCL's grant funds on things like personal protective equipment and poll workers. Is that what it was for?
And that's particularly how it was sold to the general public.
It was for worker recruitment, drive-through recruiting, nonpartisan voter education, but that's not where all the money went. In CTCL, it was spent on other things instead. So did they give it to outside liberal groups or Democratic get out the vote efforts?
They actually did.
And for absentee ballot curing initiatives.
Yes, and again in a disproportionate fashion.
And did they hire CTCL recommended staffers?
Into county offices, yes.
And so in cities like Green Bay, Wisconsin, isn't it right that they outsource the election duties to outside private liberal groups?
Yes.
But Wisconsin law says that elections are run by clerks and other government officials, right?
Very clear, yes.
And so under CTCL's grant terms, that outsourcing wasn't allowed, right?
It should not have been.
And CTCL needed to get written permission for a city like Green Bay to do this, is that correct?
Yes, I
Did
believe so.
CTCL get permission that you know in there or any other
I
jurisdiction?
don't believe we have evidence that they did.
I don't think there's any evidence they did. So CTCL approves these plans in writing, and we have an email from the then chief of staff to the Green Bay mayor telling CTCL that she would do whatever CTCL recommended. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And what did CTCL end up recommending? Scaling up the voting process by mail?
Yes.
And even recommending election staffers?
Yep.
Staying on the topic of CTCL's recommending experienced election staffers, in Green Bay, CTCL recommended an election staffer from New York. Is that accurate?
He was, yes.
But in Northeast Wisconsin, it's a pretty big place. Why didn't CTCL have anyone in mind with experience in the state of Wisconsin? Why do you think they brought someone in from the state of New York?
I don't know, but he had access to, he asked for and received access to quite a bit of privileged information.
So CTCL recommends a New York election staffer to come to Wisconsin and Green Bay to help run the election. And what role did other CTCL staffers play? Did they manage the vote by mail process with updates on absentee ballots? Mm-hmm. Did they send out, return, and collect absentee ballots?
Yes.
Did they supervise the counting of ballots?
Yes. Again, in Democrat areas.
In the city of Green Bay, did they help voters cure absentee ballots?
Yes.
And at least one staffer had access to the voting machines before Election Day and was running the voting counting operation on election night, correct?
Yes.
And CTCL recommended staffers in some instances actually replaced nonpartisan election workers. Is that accurate?
Drove them out, yes.
That's absolutely insane. And so when we're talking about these private funds coming in, I think it's incredibly appropriate for us to dig in and understand what they did. And it's the reason that I think it's so essential we pass my legislation that would actually ban Zuckerbucks. It would ban these private funds from coming in, because when you see what these funds were used for, it does not instill confidence in the elections process. And so let me jump over to you, Mr. Flanders, if I can. I want to go to the 2022 Racine, Wisconsin use of their Zuckerbucks funding for the illegal voting van. How did this work in practice? Did it stop in front of specific locations? Did it have a partisan bias?
Yeah, that's right. The city determined where the locations the van would park would be, and there were 22 locations that it actually ultimately parked in throughout the August primary. And when we did an analysis looking at where those were located, they were more likely to be located in Democratic-leaning areas than Republican-leaning areas of Racine.
So they took the voting van that was labeled as a clerk's office that looks like a food truck and specifically drove it to Democratic-leaning areas of the city. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
And did they match that and equally go to Republican-leaning jurisdictions?
They did not. They were more likely to go to Democratic-leaning areas.
So they utilized the funds to drive forward a partisan agenda. And is that illegal in the state of Wisconsin?
That is illegal under state law, yes,
And
sir.
the judge ruled that it was illegal, correct?
Correct.
And now, since 2020, now let me step out a little bit bigger picture. Since 2020, 27 states have banned Zuckerbucks. Is that correct?
Yes.
But in the state of Wisconsin, Governor Evers actually vetoed the ban of Zuckerbucks not once but twice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so this could all happen again in the state of Wisconsin this election cycle. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
That's the problem. So as we're having a conversation about the challenge that we face, it's the reason we have to ban this at the federal level, and it's the reason that at the local and state level, we need to see every state follow the actions of 20 other states, including states like Pennsylvania that took the action to actually ban Zuckerbucks. I appreciate our witnesses being here. I yield to the ranking member if he would like to make closing remarks, and then I will as well.
Yeah, I just